Now, Baltimore is one of many cities around the world where the youth, as we talked about, in underserved communities are venting their frustrations. But when the smoke clears, these communities still face the underlying issues that, well, breed discontent. Rachelle Akuffo explains.
High youth unemployment, limited opportunities, racial tension, and a lack of faith in institutions designed to protect citizens. From northwest Baltimore to the Stockholm suburbs, it's been a common thread underlying a number of riots around the world in recent years.
If our society really wanted to solve the problem, we could. It's just it would require everybody saying this is important, this is significant. And that we don't just pay attention to these communities when a CVS burns. And we don't just pay attention when a young man gets shot or has his spine snapped. But we're paying attention all the time because we consider those kids our kids and we think they're important and they shouldn't be living in poverty and violence.
And while many disagree that violence is the right response, the anger stems from valid frustrations. In 2011, what started as peaceful protests in London over the police shooting of black 29-year-old Mark Duggan quickly escalated. An alleged confrontation between a teenage protester and police opened the door for frustrations to boil over. Violence, looting and arson spread across several parts of London as concerned residents and lawmakers called for calm. But the damage to frustrated youth and communities was done long before the first bullet was fired. Analysts blamed everything from a lack of male role models and government budget cuts to social exclusion of poorer communities in the face of rising consumerism. In 2013, youth riots spread across Stockholm suburbs as tensions with poorer immigrant communities exposed growing socio-economic division. At the time, 1 in 4 Swedish youth were graduating without the skills needed to join the workforce. That number was much higher in immigrant communities. Polls showed many Swedes felt left behind and left out. In Soweto, South Africa this year, a teen was shot after allegedly robbing a store owned by a foreign national. Stores were looted. Anti-foreigner sentiment turned brutal and in some cases fatal. Some experts believe poverty stemming from apartheid is adding to socio-economic tensions there.
At least 30 million are impoverished because these are black people and who do not own property. Remember, land as a means of production is owned by, about 83 to 90% of the land is owned by less than 10% of the population. And it has remained like that even with the end of apartheid.
The same story of a lack of inclusion in prosperity and job opportunities is breeding discontent for many of the world's youth in underserved communities. The unexplained death of another young African-American man at the hands of police in Baltimore and the riots that followed have put the issue squarely on the doorstep of the nation's capital. Many are wondering whether President Obama's call to address community neglect, disinvestment and joblessness in the U.S. will translate into meaningful action for underserved communities around the world. Rachelle Akuffo, CCTV in Washington.